Welcome back to Big Mouth and fancy seeing you here. Did you miss me? You did, didn't you? Maybe just a little bit. So, Aquaman defeats two female-led movies this seasonal period. Now, I want to take you back to 2 weeks ago when there was this report going around that female-led movies make more money than male-led movies. Of course, this was a false narrative. Of course, this was SJW, Shield Media, trying to create this narrative that isn't exactly true. Now, before I start going in on that subject, I want to focus you on an article from Screen Rant, which I'm not going to read, but I'm just going to tell you about it. Now, they're reporting that Aquaman has had the lowest opening from any other DCEU movie. Of course, they do mention that there's a lot of competition this seasonal period with Bumblebee, Into the Spider-Verse, and Mary Poppins Returns. But in fact, the average of Aquaman's opening is fantastic. And when you look at the level it's beaten these two female-led movies by, and how much it's beat Into the Spider-Verse by, it's amazing. I haven't heard, every time I go on Twitter, I'm hearing about how amazing Into the Spider-Verse is. And it is. But it hasn't got anywhere near Aquaman. Neither has Mary Poppins Returns, and neither has Bumblebee. Now, if you're trying to convince me that female-led movies make more money and are more popular and are more interesting to the cinema-going audience, then why did they get nowhere near the male-led Aquaman? Well, there's a reason for that. Because Hollywood couldn't write a strong female lead if its life depended on it. It couldn't write a sonnet in Valentine's Day. You know, these are talentless people who keep on virtue signalling, but have no evidence apart from false evidence to support their crazy situation. Aquaman has won big globally. I'll remind you again, by later on today, which is Monday, it would have equaled the whole of the box office of Solo, A Star Wars Story. That tells you everything about what a bad year Disney have had. But Disney Shield Media will try and tell you that that's not the case. They'll focus on Infinity War, on Incredibles 2, which is the only two big successes they've really had. Warner Brothers have had, the Crazy Asians movie, right? Wow, massive success. Now, Crazy Rich Asians, right, is an interesting success story because it's very representative of another culture that isn't our own, right? It's a very funny, entertaining film, but it doesn't bash you over the head with anything, right? Obviously, Crazy Rich Asians has many, many Asian characters and actors in it. But they're not just there to be an empty box to reflect their culture. In fact, it's more about the entertainment than anything you'll see in its kind of place. Warner Brothers have actually got their hand on the pulse of how things should work. While people like Disney, who do something like A Wrinkle in Time, which is basically trying to do the same thing, it is, right? But it's not entertaining, it's not interesting, it's not a good movie. It's mentality. Because the truth is, SJWs don't believe in entertainment. In fact, SJWs just believe in shouting their political opinions and taking the fun out of everything. So let's go back to Aquaman. So I don't understand the article of Screen Rant and what they're really trying to say. Because what they're trying to say basically is this film's made around 72 million in its opening weekend in the US, right? Which is a tremendous opening. Now, Scott Mendelson, who is the biggest SJW Disney shill there is, was saying how, it's not the biggest of openings and it's exactly what the media said it would be. It's the prediction and things like that. And yes, Scott, but the films that you were plugging, the films that basically, if Bumblebee and Mary Poppins Returns did well, he'd be shouting from the rooftops, female-led movies rule at Christmas. But it hasn't happened, has it, Scott? In fact, your female-led movies are a failure. Because Films should just be films, and films should just be good. Now, Mary Poppins Returns and Bumblebee are not bad movies, but they're not memorable ones. You're not going to rewatch those films. How many times have you gone to the cinema so far to rewatch Aquaman? I'd like to know. I mean, some of you can't afford to do it, but if you had a choice, what would you do? We know what you'd do. You'd go back and rewatch Aquaman, not because he's a man, because that film isn't trying to prove a point. It's just trying to make a great comic book film, and it is. It's so good. Is Aquaman the best superhero movie of all time? No, it's not. It doesn't even come close, but it's very enjoyable. The effects are groundbreaking, and you like the characters, and it has a great villain, and the music's beautiful. Everything about that film works, right? Because everything doesn't have to be the best ever for it to be a good film. Aquaman has made record-breaking money internationally. It's had stronger openings internationally than it has in the US. Why is that? Well, because internationally, especially China, they don't have this love affair with Disney. Everyone's got these blinders on about Disney, that they always do the right things, that their films are better than everybody else's. It's simply not true. But America's Disney bias is still there. But even so, Aquaman beat their Disney movie, Mary Poppins Returns. Let's remember that. But still, Disney Shield Media will turn everything around on its head. They will talk about the lowest opening for a DCEU movie. They will talk about how Aquaman should have made 100 and 120 million opening, and that's not very good. They're talking about a double preview because Warner Brothers had to do certain things. For example, they did the Amazon Prime opening. But what these Disney Shield journalists are not telling you is people still had to pay for those previews because they wanted to see the film. Now, if they didn't want to see Aquaman when it was open to Amazon Prime subscribers, the headline would have been, "No one shows up for early preview. Warner Brothers tactics fail." But it didn't. But because they're not happy, because of the success of Aquaman and because of the lack of success of the other three, don't forget, they were building this as a very, very jam-packed Christmas period. They said that Aquaman could suffer, right? So in reality, if you take the Amazon Prime numbers away, it's literally made about 62 million opening, which is about what they predicted. But a 62 million opening for a standalone first film, so a superhero, is fantastic, right? It's really good. Now, it isn't the same openings as Wonder Woman or Black Panther, fair enough, but it's still a very strong opening at a busy period, and it sunk its opposition. In fact, Aquaman has made its opposition a non-opposition. So to cut the crap, whether you like the DCEU, you don't like Aquaman, or you do like Aquaman, Aquaman has been a success. They can keep on turning it around on their little heads. These are a bunch of children kicking and screaming that they didn't get their own way. They tried everything. And I know I'm repeating myself, but they tried everything to crush this movie, and it just hasn't worked. They gave it average reviews. It didn't work. They were pushing Bumblebee and Into the Spider-Verse and Mary Poppins Returns as much as they could. But those films could never compete with Aquaman. So let's make it clear, Disney Shield Media, Aquaman has been an unparalleled success. Because if it wasn't, Warner Brothers wouldn't have already greenlit the sequel. So, but, you know, this is what way it is now. People put their kind of loyalties to different studios now. So people who don't like Warner Brothers and don't like the DCEU and want it to fail will be trying to turn the narrative around. But there is no negative narrative that makes any logical sense now. Aquaman is a success. It's as simple as that. And you can not give it an award for VFX. You can talk about the lowest DCEU opening. This film, on average, globally, when it finishes, will at least make 750 to 800 million. There's nothing you can do about that. It's a success. And there's nothing you can do about it, no matter how much you spin it. But the big thing for me is that Aquaman is a male-led film. They had 2 SJW female-led films, and they crashed and burned when they went up against Aquaman. And it does show you the alpha male led movie is still the strongest thing you can have, even in this day and age. So you can call me a misogynist, a sexist, but our films that we grew up with, that's Aquaman. You've got Jason Momoa, alpha male, strong, and women and men and families wanted to see him, opposed to the two female-led movies. Now put that in your pipes and smoke it.